Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Folks, you cannot make this stuff up. Now this is a story that's popped up on my feed and nobody is talking about it. It's absolutely crazy. Even Kamala Harris recently blaming Republicans. Oh, the reason we're not doing anything, the reason we don't have any solutions is because Republicans don't want to work with us. But really the solution has always been and will always be just enforce the damn laws and secure the damn border. And every single time White House critics say that, they say, well, you know, it's not that simple because, I don't know, more racism or something. I mean, they've been fighting tooth and nail across federal courts, appeals courts, and even all the way up to the Supreme Court to stop Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. But then all of a sudden, the Biden administration does a 180 and implements their own version of the Remain in Mexico policy that worked under the Donald Trump era. Except you won't believe what I'm about to tell you. Joe Biden's DHS just announced their own Remain in Mexico policy, except it doesn't apply to everyone crossing the southern border. It only applies to Venezuelan illegal migrants and refugee seekers, asylum seekers. I wonder why that is. The open border compassionate liberals straight up just announced a law that discriminates against Venezuelan border crossers and pretty much ignores everyone else. I wonder why. We're gonna talk about it, of course. We've got some stuff to get into. Wait till you guys see what Biden is doing this time. I mean, this is just absurd. Let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so obviously a story like this is not going to make the mainstream news, and so it's only being reported on much smaller local news outlets. Take a look at this from KTSM 9 News.
The city of El Paso is responding tonight to the announcement from the Department of Homeland Security regarding migrants from Venezuela arriving at the southern border. Thank you for joining us. I'm Natasha Paloma.
And I'm Andy Morgan. We first told you about this story on KTSM 9 News at 5. DHS announced that Venezuelans entering the U.S. illegally will be returned to Mexico. The agency said it is also working to create a more orderly and safe process for people fleeing the crisis in Venezuela. DHS said it is also working with Mexico to address the issue. Mayor Oscar Lisa releasing this statement saying, in part, quote, "This decision will provide some much needed decompression as we manage this humanitarian crisis so that we may treat every individual with compassion while following the law and as all of us would like to be treated," end quote. Now, all of this as millions of dollars from the city of El Paso's general fund is being used for upfront costs for the migrant crisis in our community.
Effective immediately, DHS is sending Venezuelans who cross illegally back to Mexico. Wow! I mean, they've been telling us that we are conspiracy theorists for calling out their great amnesty plan, their clear goal to continue enabling illegal border crossings, and then eventually with the hopes of granting asylum to those illegal border crossers, and then of course with the intention of granting amnesty to all of these illegal migrants, tens of millions of them, effectively buying new Democrat voters. We're gonna let you cross in illegally, skip the line, break the law, and then we're gonna reward you by granting you citizenship or a pathway to citizenship. And when we do that, you better vote Democrat. That's clearly the goal. And this basically proves it because they're picking and choosing. They want all illegal migrants to have a fair shot. The border should be open for them to come over and make their case as to why they're refugees and seeking asylum. Of course, except for the Venezuelans. Why that distinction? Well, very simply because Venezuelans, in many cases like Cubans, are actually fleeing communism. They're actively fleeing a communist dictatorship. And that means when they come to the United States, they see all of the communist and socialist red flags, and they don't get on the Democrat bandwagon of free stuff for everyone and expanding government welfare and power. AKA, Venezuelan Americans don't vote for Democrats. In fact, Venezuelan and Cuban voters, legal immigrants from those countries and asylum seekers, are the reason that the state of Florida is turning into a Republican stronghold. Take a look at this excerpt from this article I found. Magazuelans, how Venezuelan Americans embrace Trump as their savior. Not exactly the greatest framing, but let's just take a look. In recent years, amid the political and economic crisis in Venezuela, the number of Venezuelans migrating to the United States has significantly increased. The population of Venezuelan origin in the country has tripled since the beginning of the century. century, showing its most significant growth in the past decade. According to the Migrant Policy Institute, the number of Venezuelan immigrants has increased 54% since 2015, reaching 492,000 in 2018 compared to 256,000 in 2015. This spike makes Venezuelans one of the country's fastest growing communities among other immigrant groups. The population growth has also made the Venezuelan American community an electorate to pander to. In a swing state like Florida, home to close to 80,000 eligible Venezuelan voters, an estimated 50,000 of them are registered to vote. This was very likely one of the factors that sparked President Trump's interest in the Venezuelan political crisis and the Venezuelan American community. He identified an opportunity. He held rallies at Florida International University and roundtable discussions, making explicit his support for Venezuelans and their cause for freedom, democracy, and capitalism. The courtship Republicans initiated seemed to pay dividends as Venezuelan support for Trump swelled and worried Democrats. The post-mortem in Democratic strongholds like Doral, the city with the largest Venezuelan-born population in the country, showed a 41.1% swing towards Trump. Trump eked a 1.4% win in the city in 2020 after having lost by 40% to Hillary Clinton in 2016 when she obtained 52% of the vote. A 41.4% swing in a Democrat county because Venezuelans overwhelmingly switched to the Republican Party and supported Donald Trump. And as we continue to cover voter demographics and the shifts that we're seeing Hispanics switch to the Republican Party like never before. And in the Venezuelan and Cuban communities, these shifts have become monumental. And so what the Democrats are doing here is they're saying open borders for everyone except for Venezuelans. There, with Venezuelans, we're going to have Trump-style policies, sending them back into Mexico where they can make their asylum claim over there. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up, folks. It is so clear what this corrupt, disingenuous administration regime is doing. Is a total admission that Donald Trump's policies work. They kept telling us that Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policies don't work. Ignore the data. Donald Trump's immigration system was broken, and all the problems we're seeing today, well, they're all his fault, they keep telling us. They fought tooth and nail to stop his Remain in Mexico policy. But anyone who's being honest and paying attention to this issue, in fact, even the migrants themselves will tell you that essentially the Brandon regime is full of crap. Take a look at this.
We spoke with him. He crossed just a few days ago. We asked him if he thinks this will impact how many people from Venezuela try to cross.
Yo creo que sí los va a detener porque
I think it's going to stop them because the moment they realize they can't come into the U.S., they're not going to risk coming all the way up here for nothing. It's very complicated to get to Mexico. I think it's going to stop Venezuelans from coming.
Well, would you look at that? When you actually enforce border laws, when you actually enforce laws, you deter crime. Who would have thought? The Brandon regime is once again being totally exposed for their immigration amnesty scam. This is why they're constantly trying to sneak amnesty and bills that have nothing to do with the border. Republicans vote against it and then they say, well, Republicans voted against Social Security and voted against reducing the price of insulin. When Republicans are trying to stop Democrats from sneaking amnesty into a bill. I mean, their intentions are clear, their hypocrisy is clear, and this shows you exactly who they are. They aren't the compassionate liberals that they pretend to be. They're calculated political snakes that play games of manipulation and propaganda, that play by their own rules, and the media never holds them accountable. How is this not a major story, and how are people not identifying the clear, despicable nature of the DHS's new policy here? The Democrats are trying to buy voters with their open border policies, but of course they only want to buy Democrat voters, and clearly Venezuelan border crossers aren't on that list. How disgusting is that? That's what I got for you guys though. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel if you guys are up for it. I'm gonna get back to work. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.